Chat Sports, it's your friend Carter the Power here. It's time for another Pelicans video. Subscribe, like all of our content at Chat Sports. Keep the comments flowing. I try to respond as many as I can. Let's get into 8 projections for Pelicans players this year. And of course, we're going to start off with Zion Williamson, the 75 Michael Jordan shoe $1 million man, Zion Williamson. And here's the thing that I believe is going to be interesting for the Pelicans this year is not only how they're going to use Zion, but how all the pieces around him will be used. And when he's off the floor, how will the Pelicans actually perform? How much are they going to play Zion? So this, to me, for a lot of you, when I shared my stat projections for Zion a few weeks ago, you said it was a little too conservative. So I'll share it. I haven't changed my mind here. 15 points per game, 8 rebounds per game, 2.5 assists per game. We'll get to that in a moment. And 1.5 blocks per game. So the last 3 NBA rookies of the year, Luka Doncic, Ben Simmons, and Malcolm Brogdon, this was their average stat line. 15.7 points per game, 5.6 rebounds per game, and 6.1 assists per game. So Zion Williamson, with this stat line, will be in the running for Rookie of the Year. But here's why his stats could easily fluctuate. Because how he was used at Duke and how he was used at Spartanburg High School in South Carolina and pretty much any other AAU team he's ever played for could be a completely different way how he's used for the Pelicans. And The Ringer had a very interesting stat and film study recently about how Zion Williamson, when he was allowed to run the point forward for Duke, his assist numbers actually went way up. There were 2 games where he handled the ball a lot on the perimeter when RJ Barrett was out, and Zion averaged close to 8 assists per game. Now listen, the NBA is completely different than Duke. It is a completely perimeter-oriented, give the ball to your playmaker, drive and kick league. That's how this league is set up now. So I want to show this. We did a lineup video, a potential starting lineup video. Go check that out on our last Chat Sports Pelicans video, where we went through each and every lineup. And I want to show you a point forward Zion Williamson lineup, or in this case, a point center Zion Williamson lineup. And that would look like this: Zion, Jrue Holiday, JJ Redick, Brandon Ingram, and Frank Jackson, who is not only a great corner 3-point shooter, he's also great at understanding court spacing. And ironically, Duke had one of the worst 3-point shooting teams in all the country. So because of that, while Zion was at Duke, he didn't have that much room actually to drive the lane. A lot of what he did was just putbacks and just power dunks in the paint. Well, with this lineup, ironically, filled with plenty of Duke players, Redick, Ingram, and Jackson, all 3 of which are great 3-point shooters, and Jrue Holiday can be. He's a Swiss Army knife. He does a little bit of everything well. Zion Williamson will get to do something that he does better than anybody else: be an athlete. It will allow him to drive the lane. If he keeps going to the lane at will and no one can stop him, guess what? Drive and kick. So if this lineup is played and Zion Williamson becomes more of a perimeter-oriented player and he's able to run the offense from the top of the key, then all his numbers would go up. I could see him getting up to 16 or 17 points per game. I just showed you a minute ago 2.5 assists per game. If he's used in a different format, I can easily see a 5 or a 6 assist a game kind of player, and we all know what he can do on the defensive end, blocking shots. So that's if the Pelicans decide to play small. I know they have Derrick Favors. I know they have Jahlil Okafor and Jackson Hayes and more non-perimeter oriented players, and also Lonzo Ball, who is a ball dominant not necessarily spot-up shooter kind of player. So it just depends on how these lineups actually happen. So the stat projection for Zion Williamson, no matter how you see it, no matter how you feel he's going to be used next year, I want to ask you a simple question, Pelicans fans. Do you believe Zion Williamson will be next year's NBA Rookie of the Year? Type Y for yes and type N for no. I would say no. And if you're like me and you don't believe he's going to win Rookie of the Year, tell me in the comments who you think that will be. I am on the Ja Morant train, especially as a rookie. He knows his role. He knows what he's going to do. He's on a bad team, so he's going to put up big numbers. I think Ja Morant's a pretty safe bet to actually win Rookie of the Year next year. Now moving on to Jrue Holiday, 22 points per game, 5 rebounds a game, 8 assists per game, and 2 steals per game. All drastic increases from his numbers last year. Last year for Jrue, it was the first time he got over 20 points per game in quite a few years. I think he becomes an even better player this year. It depends how much he actually handles the ball. It depends how much Lonzo's used. But I do think Jrue Holiday will get the ball quite a bit. He has a higher player efficiency rating than any other returning Pelican. But my favorite thing is what he does that's not on the stat sheet. Help side defense, basketball IQ, locker room leadership. A big reason why JJ Redick is in New Orleans is because of Jrue Holiday. I believe he will be an NBA All-Star next year. And I know 22 points per game is a pretty big number. I can certainly see him getting to that point. And I think he wants to prove himself to be an All-Star, especially after David Griffin says he actually has MVP potential. Now, I won't go that far, but I do think Jrue Holiday will be a surprise NBA All-Star next year, especially with Klay Thompson being out with injury. That opens up a slot. Will that go to Luka Doncic? Will that go to another Western Conference guard? I don't know. So we shall see. Don't forget, like Chat Sports. Go to chatsports.com. Subscribe to the YouTube page. Follow all the social media accounts and follow all the Chat Sports personalities. Moving on to Brandon Ingram, player number 3 we're breaking down today. 20 points per game, 4 rebounds per game, 3 assists per game, and 1 steal per game. Now, Brandon needs to step up like he did last year after the All-Star break. And I actually got to see one of those performances in person when the Lakers came to New Orleans, and he was a completely different player. Before the All-Star break, Brandon Ingram was a 17, 4.3, and 3 player, and after the All-Star break, he was a 27.8 points per game, 7.5 rebounds per game, and 2 assists per game. And I know that was only in 6 games post All-Star break, and I know that's a small sample size, but it shows that he could have that type of potential. So, question, once again, for all our Pelicans viewers out there, do you think Brandon Ingram will average 20 points per game next year? Will we get more post-All-Star Brandon Ingram? Type Y for yes in the comments and type N for no. Now, by far the hardest player to project next year is Lonzo Ball. Here's how I see his season playing out. 8 points per game, 4 rebounds per game, 6.5 assists per game, and 1.5 steals. And this is by far the hardest player. By far. His health is a concern. How does he feel about being traded from New Orleans? The personal big baller brand business. That off-the-court stuff matters to the Ball family. How's he going to react to being in New Orleans? This is his first time not in California for quite some time. It's a completely different culture. Have we seen the best of him? Or are we going to get a better version? Were the Lakers holding him back? More questions for Lonzo than any other player. I do think his assists will go up. I think having a veteran mentor like Jrue Holiday will certainly help him out. But guys, I just don't know what he's going to do as a player. Now, obviously, we know Lonzo for his passing, the assist. That's what we all know about with Lonzo Ball. He did average 5.3 last year, so I do see an uptick in assists simply because of the minutes. I do see him in the starting lineup. So we shall see what will happen with Lonzo Ball. Moving on to Derrick Favors, another huge offseason acquisition from the Utah Jazz. I see a 14-point-per-game guy, 8.2 rebounds, 1 assist, and 1.9 blocks per game. Remember, Favors had to share the paint with Rudy Gobert, one of the best centers in the league, one of the best defensive centers ever. Now he will share the court with an all-NBA defensive power forward down the road in Zion Williamson. I do think Zion will become an elite defender, but Favors is a guy that could come in and start day one. A lot of people are projecting him to start day one. I don't see it. I know I'm going to get killed for this again. I still think Jahlil Okafor will start at center. We'll get to that a little bit later. But I do think Derrick Favors ends up having the better year and having solid numbers. I don't see an all-star level player, but I see a very good player for the New Orleans Pelicans. Moving on to J.J. Redick, another key offseason acquisition. 15 points per game, 2 rebounds per game, 3.4 assists per game, and a steal per game. Now, Redick's stat line is a personification of how the NBA has transitioned to a three-point shooting league. In his career, J.J. Redick has averaged 12 points per game, which is a pretty solid number for an NBA journeyman like him. But did you know, it wasn't until he was 29, 7 years into the league, he has averaged 15 points per game. That was the first time he's ever done 15 points per game. And every season since 2013, he has averaged at least 15 points per game. Now that is super impressive for a guy that deep in his career to increase his productivity, a non-ball dominant shooter, and that just shows you the importance of the three-point shot, and J.J. Redick can shoot it as well as anybody. Now, I don't think that he starts, but in his last 412 games, 398 of them he has started. But 13 of those 14 games coming off the bench actually came last season with the Philadelphia 76ers. I think there will be some games he'll start. I do think he starts the season off the bench so the Pelicans can have some instant offense coming off the bench. And a lot of this comes down to his chemistry with Lonzo Ball and Jrue Holiday. I want to ask you guys, though, do you believe J.J. Redick, who is a veteran starter in this league, deserves to be a starter? Type Y for yes or type N for no, and let me know. Let me know what you think J.J. Redick would do as a starter compared to Lonzo Ball. Now, Jahlil Okafor, another wild card here. I stand by my stance that he's going to start next year. That doesn't mean he's going to play more minutes. That doesn't mean Derrick Favors isn't going to eventually take over the starting role. But I think day one, Alvin Gentry wants another player out there that fully understands his offense. And my favorite thing is that in his rookie year, Jahlil averaged 17 points per game. Now, I see him 10 points per game, 5 rebounds per game, 1 assist, and 1 block. You know, that obviously isn't 17 points per game, but his numbers have dipped. Last year, he was under double digits. I see him as a double-digit scorer this year, even coming off the bench. I'm a true believer in Jahlil Okafor's improvement over the last few years, and he stepped up big time with Anthony Davis out of the picture. And how about this last player? This one was difficult. I wanted to limit myself to 8 players. That's a pretty normal playoff rotation. And that number 8 player was tough to decipher. Am I going to pick Frank Jackson, who we mentioned earlier? How about E'Twaun Moore, who's been in the league for a long time, a solid veteran, 4th year in New Orleans type of player? But I'm going to go with the newbie, Josh Hart, another former Laker, the Villanova product, has been a decent NBA player. I see him as a 6 point per game, 4 rebound per game, 1 assist, and 1 steal. I think he's going to split a lot of those minutes with Moore and with Jackson and potentially Nickeil Alexander-Walker, the rookie out of Virginia Tech. There's a lot of things that Josh Hart does well. There's nothing really he does exceptionally, but my favorite thing about Josh Hart has been his attitude. Positive guy, right when he got moved to New Orleans, he was showing pictures of himself in New Orleans gear, going to New Orleans gaming events, going to eat beignets. He's been a fun follow on social media. He's a team-first guy, and I think that's going to be huge for the Pelicans down the road. It is up for debate, though, and I want to discuss this in the comments with you guys as well. Bringing up another audience question. Which of these three Pelicans role players will have the biggest season? E'Twaun Moore, Josh Hart, or Frank Jackson? There's a lot of Frank Jackson love out there. Looked great in the summer league. Looked great in his minutes last year for the Pelicans. I love the way he understands spacing, high energy guy. I actually am in the Frank Jackson camp. I do think he ends up being the most productive Pelican, and I think some people are sleeping a little bit on E'Twaun Moore. Let's discuss in the comments, and you got to be a Pelicans diehard to know those three guys. Let's discuss together. But as we always do with these lists, I'm not going to leave you without a bonus player. The most electrifying player in the NBA Summer League was not Alexander Walker. It wasn't Didi out of Brazil, and it wasn't even Zion Williamson. It was Jackson Hayes with the posterization dunk of the year. Everybody wants to know about Jackson Hayes. I see him as a 4-point, 4-rebound, 0.5 assist, and 1 block type of player next year. There were some people in our last video saying Jackson Hayes should start. Now slow down. It was the Summer League, okay? Summer League. Let him develop. He was only a freshman last year coming out of Texas. And the Pelicans, I think, got a steal at pick number 8. So give him time. Alvin Gentry for sure is going to bring him along slowly. But if he is half as good in the Summer League as he is in the NBA, he's going to play a lot of minutes. And it's interesting. He made second team All-Summer League, according to Sports Illustrated. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, the number 17 overall pick, actually made first team All-Summer League. He was fantastic. Like, all the Pelicans rookies outside of Zion just playing that one game, they all looked incredible in the NBA Summer League. Once again, it's a Summer League. There is a reason to be excited, but it was a Summer League. So I don't want to hear any Jackson Hayes should start comments. I don't want to hear it. Like, that's just not going to happen. Anyway, my name is Carter the Power. I want to connect with you on social media. I'm at Carter the Power. You can see all my Saints comments, content for my LSU fans. I do a lot of LSU stuff. I'm on WWL Radio in New Orleans for all my NOLA people. Let's connect. Go to carterthepower.com and at Carter the Power on all socials. Chat sports. We are a fun group of NBA-loving people. Subscribe, baby. Subscribe. Let's do this.